Oh, so The Walking Dead has finally ended. After 11 seasons, this 11th season being really 1.5 seasons long, it was long overdue to finally come to an end. So the finale, the final episode, just at on a basic level, if you compare the final episode of the show with the opening episode of the show, the premiere, they're almost unrecognizable. They seem almost like two different shows, and this is despite the fact that we have like a hospital scene in the finale that's directly calling back to like the premiere with Rick waking up in the hospital. But while you had kind of a more contained, sort of gritty, understated zombie drama back in the first season, it grew into this massive cast with these huge communities and all this melodrama by the end. So what worked, what didn't work? What would I have done differently? What I liked best about the finale, what I thought was really well done was the death. Obviously, there are spoilers here. The death of Rosita. Rosita, played by Christian Serratos. I'm probably getting her name wrong. Rosita had become one of my favorite characters a while ago. She's tough. She's no nonsense. She doesn't engage in any bullshit drama. For the most part, Rosita is just a really level-headed, likable character. And it sucks. It sucks that she died. And yet, it provided, I think, one of the best death series of scenes, one of the best deaths in all of The Walking Dead. Not the most shocking, not the most gruesome. There are plenty of the others in previous seasons that were shocking and gruesome. But the saddest, the most it's up there anyways. I'd have to go through each season and think about it, but it's up there for me. I thought it was really emotional, and I got pretty emotional watching it. Both the scenes really, there were essentially three scenes with Rosita. There's more than three scenes with Rosita, but first we'll talk about how she dies, right? She finds baby Coco along with Eugene and Gabriel. They're trying to get to the others, but the hospital is surrounded. They get surrounded. They have nowhere to go, so they have to climb up this pipe, and she tells them to go before her. This actually bothered me. I don't think there's any way that these guys actually climb the pipe before the woman carrying a baby. Like, maybe Eugene first, and then Rosita, and then Gabriel, but I just don't think it would go down like this, and I wish that they'd structured this a little differently, because it just doesn't... Rosita by herself, maybe, sure, but carrying a baby, just... I don't know. That seems unrealistic to me. But anyway, they climb up, she gets caught by the zombies, pulled back down into the zombie, horde that descends over her, and then she, bursts out with her little, saw blade thing, hacks her way through, gets up onto the van that's right there, and then leaps across onto the pipe and climbs up. Once again, showing that Rosita is a badass. And, we've seen this before multiple times with Rosita. I think one of the most underrated characters on the show, underutilized characters on the show, but she has gotten some really badass moments, often not often, but a couple times saving children from zombies. And here she does it again. She saves her infant. But then later, when they're at the safe house and Eugene comes to talk with her, he realizes immediately something's wrong. And she shows him that she's been bitten. Like up here. And asks him, pretty much tells him to stop crying, get it together. She doesn't want to tell anybody yet. They've got work to do. They've got to still fight Pamela and everything and save the town save the Commonwealth from the zombies. But this scene between her and Eugene is actually quite good. And I think both her and Josh McDermott, who plays Eugene, do a really, 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 really good job. And don't get me wrong, Eugene is not my favorite character. In a lot of ways, he annoys the hell out of me. And his relationship with Max is so preposterous, and the way he talks is just so over the top. But in tonight's episode, I thought he did a phenomenal job, and I really enjoyed his performance alongside Christian Serratos as Rosita. So Rosita and Eugene, I think, stole the show. I think hands down, they stole the show tonight. And there was that scene because it's one of these, it's such a rare thing in The Walking Dead. But at the end of this first conversation, he tells her, he says, "I just love you so much." And it's I know he has had a crush on her in the past, but it's a platonic love thing at this point. And it's almost shocking to hear someone say, "I love you" on this show, which is weird because, they always act like they care about each other so much, but you never hear them actually say, "I love you." This is one of the only episodes I can think of. And maybe I'm just misremembering, but I just don't, it stuck out at me so much because later Daryl says it to Carol and she says it back to him. It's just so rare to hear, "I love you," which is a little, I mean, for me, my kids, I say it to them all the time and they say it to me all the time. It's just like, but anyways, it was a nice moment. And then later, after the whole confrontation's over, Gabriel notices something's wrong at this big feast they're having afterwards, and she whispers in his ear. And I liked this scene because there's almost no talking. She whispers, we don't hear what she says, and then you can see this sort of grief on his face, and he holds her hand, and then you see Judith looking over at them, and she's smiling, but she sees Rosita's face, and Rosita's got tears running down her cheeks, and she sort of smiles and shrugs, and again, I just think she conveys so much sadness in that moment. And then Judith, you can see on her face, that smile turns into a frown, concern. And then they bring, at this point, people begin to realize what's going on. And Maggie and Carol bring her upstairs where she lays down in a bed next to Coco, her child. And Gabriel says some version of the last rites over her. And then he takes the baby away. And he says to her, "We'll see you again." And then Eugene comes in and sits with her. And she says, her last words are, "I'm glad it was you in the end." And I just thought it was so well done. Beautiful performances. The writing, they didn't have Eugene just say a bunch of dumb shit. He keeps it very short and sweet. Just a very moving death for this show. And maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just hitting me the way it does. But I was very sad and very touched. Some of the other character moments in this finale I thought were really good. Maggie and Negan. Negan finally apologizes for killing Glenn, and he apologizes very, very much from the heart, very sincerely, and it definitely affects Maggie. But when she later talks with him about and thanks him for saying that, she says she's come to the realization that she can never forgive him, that he has a place here, that he's earned it, that he's changed and he's tried, but she still knows she can never forgive him because Glenn was just too much the love of her life, and she can't ever, whenever she sees Negan, she thinks of the bat, and that's, they finally have this like important conversation that I feel like they've needed to have for a long time. So I thought that was really good. In the end, there's like a time jump after all the shit goes down, and there's like a lot of like teary hugs and greetings and farewells and all this stuff. And Daryl says goodbye to Carol, and that's the second time we hear "I love you." Again, it's a platonic way. These are not, people wanted to ship Carol and Daryl for the longest time, and I'm so glad they never did that. And then he rides off, and the music they're playing. They did some really good things in this episode. I thought the music at the end was very, very like stirring and beautiful as Daryl's riding off on his bike into the woods far away. He's leaving the community behind. He's going off on his own adventure. And I thought that was a perfect way to end the episode. But that's not the end of the episode. And we get, at this point, the whole cameo scene with Rick and Michonne. We'll get to that in a bit. So those are the things I really liked about the episode. I think moving moments between characters, the sort of like meaty character stuff that I think makes these, makes shows click, makes them tick, makes them work. Stuff that we don't get enough of in The Walking Dead. Even though there are characters we care about and we love, we don't get enough really genuinely great scenes between them. And this episode definitely gave us a few, which I'm really, really grateful for, because we needed that. And then there's the rest of it. What to say about the rest of it? They didn't kill off enough characters, and I say that because there were just so many. It should have felt like a bigger deal at the end that they overcame this enormous struggle, the biggest struggle ever. But it didn't. It felt like much lower stakes and much easier fought victory than the Saviors or the Whisperers. There's a part of me that thinks you almost could have just, if you'd brought Maggie back a little bit sooner so that her and Negan could have worked some of this stuff out, you could have just ended after the Whisperers and had the same thing. Rosita could have gotten bit. All that stuff could still have happened, but just against this much more interesting, scary set of bad guys. Because the Commonwealth, it fell flat for me. Pamela is not a very interesting villain. The Commonwealth itself was mostly hokey. They never did a lot of world building, so we got a good sense of what it was like there beyond just suburbia, but also authoritarian. It was just poorly set up, and we spent so much time getting to this point, and then it's like they just come up with the solution. They stop Pamela, she's arrested. They come up with this elaborate trap to lure the zombies in with a record playing on a PA system so that the loud music draws all the zombies there, and they've set up all these fuel barrels. And then when the record stops playing, it lights a spark and blows it all up, and they have a big CGI explosion, and all these thousands of zombies are killed. And then they win, and then they, that's it. That's the end. That's the end of the conflict. Pamela's stopped without a shot being fired. Zombies are stopped in a 5-minute montage scene. And that's it. That sucks. At least in the beginning of the episode, there was some fighting, in the streets, kind of picking up where we left off the week before. Luke and Jules both die. Those are the only other two characters who die. You get Rosita, and I'm glad that they focus so much on her, but I would have loved to see more of the sort of C tier, B tier characters get killed off in a fight, in a hard won fight. Instead, we just sort of, we get a couple deaths at the beginning and a lot of crying from Yumiko and Magna and Carrie and all them over Luke as he dies. They've cut off his leg because it was bitten. And Jules is killed in the street. I kind of knew right then when they were spending so much time on Luke that there weren't going to be that many deaths, because if you spend that much time on a minor character's death right at the beginning of the episode, you're not going to have that much time to spend on all the rest of the characters that might die. And sure enough, everybody lives, and there's this big happy ending. I'm not against having sort of a happy ending, right? It's okay if they're survivors and they move on and they rebuild. That's okay. I didn't want everyone to die. But it just lowers the stakes when it seems like it's such, they just get there, they get to the city, they get out of the hospital, they meet up with Mercer, they take down the big boss, they blow up all the zombies, and they're done. And then we have, half the episode devoted to kind of the falling action, the resolution. So all of that I found very disappointing. It was almost like watching two different episodes. One that was the emotional, sending us off with real feeling, and then the other which was the plot stuff that just kind of thudded out with a whimper, not a bang. Finally, we have the cameos. I almost feel like I should make a different video for this, but I'm not going to. Or not yet anyways. Rick and Michonne are back. Well, they're back in such the most Walking Dead-ish way you can imagine. The Walking Dead's worst habits are certainly on display at the very end of this episode, because we get Rick and Michonne right after the scene with Daryl writing off, the perfect ending to the whole series. They have to tease us with the Rick and Michonne stuff. So they take the perfect ending, this visual, poetic ending, beautiful music, and then they throw in what is essentially this goofy, corny tease setup that if you just chopped it down to a fifth of what they give us, it would be actually tantalizing and interesting. But basically you have Michonne writing a letter to the kids. I've tried to get back to you guys. I tried so hard, but I just can't. Why can't you? Surely you can just go back. What's stopping you? I guess that's what we're supposed to wonder. Rick is also narrating how he thinks about the living and the dead, and and you've shown him, and it's all this very like flowery purple prose, like bullshit. Like it's so dramatic and silly, and they're they're narrating back and forth, and we see them both looking over a fire as though they're looking at each other, but they're not because they're not together. They're just looking over a fire, like somewhere out there, like that like two people, like they're not together, but they're singing together. Michonne at one point is in like leather armor with like a what kind of helmet is that she's wearing? It's for like some sports thing, right? Like she looks like an umpire almost or something like that, but I don't think that's right. She's on a horse and she's riding towards like what looks like either a giant horde of zombies or like some group of people walk. I don't know what it is. We've seen her in, like we saw that huge column that she like joined up with when she in the episode she leaves. So I don't know what that's all about. More interesting, we have Rick on this like muddy shore. It looks like he might be across from New York City or something, or some big city. And he's walking. There's all these like zombies stuck in the mud. It's a pretty cool visual, actually. Greg Nicotero directed this, so there's great zombie stuff in it. Like the zombie special effects and makeup is fantastic. But a helicopter comes up and says, like he's like no, like they're catching him, right? He's escaped somewhere and now he's being caught. And the voice in the helicopter says, "Come on, Rick." Like she says, there's no escape for the living or something like that. And we get then just the most eye-rolling point of the whole episode, which is like Michonne's telling her children in the letter, remember what I told you, which is what he said. And then we hear like Maggie say, "We're the ones who live." And then like Gabriel says, "We're the ones who live." And then all these characters saying, "We're the ones who live. We're the ones who live." Blah, blah, blah. They're showing Rick like raising his hands. This like whole montage of different characters, and then throughout this, before this, they were showing like all the characters who had died, and it's this big send off to the whole show. We're the ones who live. We're the ones who live. We're the ones who live. And then like Judith and RJ are sitting there like looking out over the fields, and she's like, "We get to start over. We're the ones who live, or we're the ones who live." I can't remember how she says it exactly, but it's just like freaking Walking Dead, man. Like, why do you do this crap? Why do you do it? You take a perfectly good ending and then you put in this annoying, hokey, cheesy crap at the end. Who thinks this is a good idea to like end your show with a bunch of people saying "we're the ones who live," like, and then a little girl saying that to her little brother, like anybody talks like that in the real world. If she had just said, "We get to start over," that would have been a better final line than "we're the ones who live." Honestly, if she hadn't said anything, if you just cut all of those people saying "we're the ones who live," it would have been better. But I've gone on long enough. We're the ones who live. You know what it is. The Walking Dead, man. End of an era. Well, sort of. Like, all these spin-offs are coming, so we know it's not really over. And then maybe that's why they didn't kill very many people, because they're gonna bring them all back. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you thought of the finale, the series finale, in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. Peace.